In today's episode of the Pathmark Presents podcast, I have an interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Peter Klukowski, who's hailing over as the marketing lead in business development at EMHware. And today we want to be, going in, what it's all about. The tagline, "Mental Health Matters," is quite interesting. So we want to really dive into what is the different products, like which problems are being solved, but also how Peter is thinking about growth for the company. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you for having me.
Good. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about EMHware. What is it all about? What types of products, which problem are you guys solving?
Sure. So EMHware, we are a software platform. We're a cloud-based client information system, agency management software. So we basically focus on solving issues when it comes to mental health providers. So that could be like agencies in Canada, universities, hospitals. And we house all the client information. We help them, create appointments, and we've integrated reporting as well. So it's like a working database for our clients, and they use it on a day-to-day.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. You already alluded a little bit to sort of which types of organizations are leveraging. Maybe give us a bit more insight. Like, is that more from like private providers, governmental providers? Maybe give us an insight. Who is leveraging the platform?
Sure. So 98% of our clients are non-for-profits, government-funded organizations. So that could be like mental health, just Canadian mental health associations. It could be just community organizations. It could be, just like community centers out in the rural areas of Canada. We also service First Nations organizations as well. So those are the types of clients that we, focus on. We do have some private clients as well, but we don't focus on that side of the business. It's mostly just the public sector.
That makes sense. And who would you say within those organizations is actually, reaching out? Like, who's the person that is bringing EMHware on board? Like, is there a particular role that you've identified? Quite curious. Like, who's the champion, let's say, within those organizations to bring in EMHware?
Well, that's a good question. It really varies based on organizations. These organizations can be 5 people. And if that's the case, they're all champions for us. We have to get buy-in from everybody. And then we could have, organizations with 50 to 100 staff members. And then it's mostly the executive team that's making those final decisions. Our customer journey is really focused on making sure that everyone is kind of bought in to switching onto the software. So, we have to be very, very flexible in how we present our product.
Makes sense. And what would you say is their journey like? Like, what is a typical journey, right, of somebody, getting to know EMH? Like, what is the path that they go through? In other words, the client acquisition channels that you guys would be leveraging mostly?
Sure. So, it starts with just an introduction, just like most discovery, trying to figure out what the pain points are, what the challenges are, and if we have the functionality within the software to actually solve those problems. We move to a demonstration of the software, and these are probably the first 2 easiest steps in our customer journey. And then it comes to implementation. So that's the challenging part, the training, figuring out a schedule, figuring out the timing, before finally getting the software in place in a lot of these organizations. It's really based on that, kind of like how we acquire the customers is based on timing, right? Based on when they get funding, when they have time, when they're not so busy with new clients, their wait lists aren't stacked behind, they're behind on their wait lists. I would say that's probably like the biggest part of the journey itself.
It makes a lot of sense. How do you think about the website actually in that journey? Like, what role would you attribute to the website in their journey?
So that's an interesting question. So the website, it's acquisition for us. My strategy moving this year is to kind of get away from the traditional, feature benefits type, presentation where, here are all the things that we offer and here's how it's going to help you. Where I'm trying to move towards more of a thought leadership position where, instead of presenting from the software's perspective, we present from the agency's perspective or the actual client's perspective where they have challenges and become more informative. I would love it to be a resource for people when it comes to, new proceedings in like the industry or in the sector, new rules, new government, new reporting, that kind of thing. And that's where where I want to move the website to, is to become a resource for our clients moving forward. But right now we're just kind of sitting on just like a presentation acquisition kind of position.
Gotcha, that makes sense. I'm curious though, like in the roles that you've been in prior, and also now with EMH, like what have you seen as like interesting ways to or approaches, methodologies, technologies to increase the amount of conversions that are coming from the website? You mentioned to go into like a thought leadership position, obviously. Any other methodologies or tools that you've been picking up over the time?
Well, I mean, there's like just traditional things like chatbots, remarketing through Google, things like that, making sure that, we capture as much, prospect information as we can. We don't really have necessarily a problem with conversions. Our conversion rate, I would say, is above average in terms of how we're getting it, but that's because our traffic is mostly referral traffic. So, our community is a very small community when you think about it. A lot of these organizations talk to each other, and a lot of them give themselves referrals if they don't have the capability to service some of their clients. And they ask, who are you using for this type of platform? And that EMHware comes up in conversation because our product is fantastic, so we get a lot of that referral traffic. So our audience is really, really small at the same time, and who we're marketing to. But it doesn't mean that we can't, change our strategy to get more of our current clients and try and capture people who are new into the organization or new into the sector. So
you mentioned retargeting there, that just because there's a theme that has been coming up on recent podcasts, actually, where people talk more and more about the cookieless future. Right? The third-party cookie is going to be gone out of Chrome by the end of the year, beginning of the coming year. Is that a topic that is already relevant in your industry? I'm just curious because that's been coming up a couple of times on the shows. Or is that something you guys are going to be looking at once this is arriving sooner?
I think probably once we actually come back, once it's implemented and we understand the rules fully, what we can do, what we can't, we'll have that discussion. The remarketing is more just brand awareness kind of thing.
Gotcha.
We find that if we don't have nurture campaigns, when we have that in between time, when you acquire a customer, when you book a demo and you don't nurture them, you get a lot of drop off at that point. So it's important to have consistent touch points and make sure that they're reminded that they do have that meeting with you coming up.
Makes sense. Super interesting. Let's switch gears. I'm curious, right? We learned a lot about what EMH is all about, what you guys are doing, who you're serving, also how you're thinking about the different channels and the growth journey. Now I'm curious about your journey, right? As a marketing lead, but also having a business development head, there's obviously a lot you could, learn and read and educate yourself on in order to keep on improving. What's your favorite places? Where do you like to read? How do you filter from all the noise that is out there?
I filter from all the noise. I get a lot of my information actually off LinkedIn. My network is pretty strong, and they are constantly updating, in terms of strategies and what to do. That being said, I also look a lot on Reddit, to be honest. I think that community is massive and bringing the best people from all around the world. So it's a global resource for myself.
Very cool. Since we're slowly coming to the end of the interview, I would have some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready for those?
I think so.
They're a bit of a surprise for the guests, and they're very known to the regular listeners. So I'm sure you'll be fine. What is the last book you read or the last podcast you listened to?
Last book I read, I'm almost finished this book, the $100 Startup. That's what I'm reading right now.
Yeah. What is one single thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
I think growth, honestly. We're pretty big, smaller organization right now in terms of our audience and where we're serving, but we're really, I guess you could say, concentrated in one area of the country. So we definitely want to expand pretty aggressively across because there's a huge untapped market for us there. So
if there would be no boundaries in technology, what would be the one thing that you would fix for your role today?
No boundaries in technology. I mean, I'd probably look at being able to transition from sales to implementation, somehow figure that out, make it much more efficient and streamlined.
What's the last thing that kept you awake at night about the company?
With the company, kept me awake. Hiring new staff. That way.
Very cool. And for the very last question, right? I would like to do a little bit of time travel, if you're okay. Let's go all the way back to Wilfrid Laurier University, right? You're heading now into your career of business and sales and growth. What's the one advice you would give yourself for your journey?
Try harder.
Try harder.
Try harder. Maybe don't just settle for the first thing that comes across, and then maybe set some goals a little bit more early in my youth versus later. I think that would make my life a little bit different. That's a depressing question.
All good. No, I mean, it's good to reflect and to share. Very cool. Peter, I really appreciate you took the time with us today to be a guest on the Pathmark Presents show. I want to give you the very last word, right? If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about EMH, what's the one thing they should remember? I
mean, EMHware, we're a Canadian organization. We're focused in Canada, and our mandate is about helping people who are helping others. It's mental health is becoming more and more of an impact in daily lives, especially since pandemic. And we're really just trying to make the people who are actually providing those services make their lives a lot easier. And our software does have the functionality to do that. So yeah, I mean, if you're in that field, if you're in that sector, definitely take a look at EMHware, because I know that we have the features and the benefits that'll make your life a lot easier than it is.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on Pathmark Presents.
Thank you for having me.